like to get started. I'd like to invite to join me, behind me, Alan Alexander, the Vice Chair of United Way, Salt Lake, Karen Crompton from Voices for Utah Children, Superintendent Martel Menlove, Superintendent of Public Instruction here in the state of Utah, Patty Harrington, Utah School Boards Association, Ganelle Rogers, she's here, PTA President, and Mr. Mark Bouchard, and then also a few of our supporters from our Latino community. I'd like to make sure that they're here to come and join me, please, behind me as we talk about this important bill. We feel it's important that both the press and the public see the broad support behind SB 71, which is entitled Results-Based Financing for Early Childhood Education. Now, the reason I wanted this group here was also to indicate that an enormous amount of data, research, and information has gone into this bill. We've been working on this for over a year, and the result is a bill that I believe represents what's really happening in public education relative to our most at-risk student populations. Now, I wanted to just share a couple of points, a couple of pieces of information for you about why I'm doing this bill, why I'm promoting it, why this group and myself support this initiative, and what we hope to accomplish with this bill. I'm sorry, Sharon, could you please join us as well from the UEA? I apologize. I have you on my list here and I just missed over the name. I'd like to have you up here with us. I'd like to just talk about a couple of points. First of all, we need to recognize as a state the growing population that we would define as at risk in our state. Today, about 39% of the total student population in Utah is defined as at risk from an income perspective. In addition, another 6% of our total student population is defined as at risk because English is a second language. And this demographic on both sides is growing every single year. Why is that a problem? Because we are seeing both statistically as well as from an academic perspective, academic results at the end of the year, at the end of graduation, that this particular group is struggling to meet the same academic opportunities and results as our typical white middle-class student. That's a real problem from my perspective, and let me share with you a couple of examples. These groups, specifically, for example, English as a second language, they have non-proficiency rates of 65% in English, 75% in math, and 80% in science. Our English language students, only 40% of them are graduating from high school. When you look at the demographics across our Hispanic population, our African American population, the American Indian population, the problems are the same. This particular group of students are, in the best way to put it from my perspective, failing. And the result is significant economic cost to the state that we are spending today in remediation costs, as well as the economic impact in our society from individuals that will struggle or be unable to contribute economically in our state, as well as the cost relative to social programs that they become dependent on, and the criminal justice system that they wind up getting involved in. I don't believe that that's acceptable. We can do better, and that's the reason why I, as a Republican legislator, want to do something different. Now, we can put our heads in the sand, proverbially. We can pretend that this problem is not there. We can continue to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, literally, on remediation that has proven, even despite the Herculean effort of our educators to address this problem. Despite that effort, we are still spending all of this money and seeing the same results. And I've always been taught that if you continue to do something and expect a different result, then that's the definition of insanity. We cannot continue to expect a different result by doing the same things. So I spent the last year in partnership with many of my colleagues trying to figure out what can we do for this at-risk population. And we found some shining examples in the state of programs that are actually working to address this gap, this academic gap for these at-risk students. One of those examples is the Granite School District pre-K program. There are other examples of similar types of pre-K programs that are having a direct impact on performance. I want to share with you what some of those results are, just to give context. When you look at the academic results in the Granite program, excuse me, let me just grab that page. We are seeing proficiency rates in the neighborhood of 78% for students that attended the Granite pre-K program. That's up from proficiency rates of 50 and 60%. So for our most at-risk students who attend this particular program in the Granite preschool environment are now at or above their peer level. Now here's the key piece. This isn't just a 1 or 2 year benefit after a couple of years of preschool. This is a benefit that is enduring. We've now been following this program for almost 5 years. And the data shows that these students, when they are remediated before they come into the education program, before they come into public education, then they have significant more advantage in competing with their peers at or above peer level. What's even more exciting to me is this particular cohort that we followed in Granite. We showed that there was a significant cost avoidance relative to pre-K. These particular pre-K students, for example, of the 737 students that were followed, roughly 238 of those students qualified based on pre-assessment, or it appeared that they would qualify for special education support as they came into the education system. What we found after this 4 or 5 year study is that only 11 of those 238 students actually needed pre-K services. That means we saw a cost avoidance of approximately $1.8 million just for those kids. Now, based on the program that we're proposing, we believe that the state can save millions of dollars in cost avoidance and, more importantly, help these kids to succeed academically. And we're going to hear more about that from some of our colleagues that will speak today. What I wanted to share was a key component of this particular program. The response I've gotten from my legislative colleagues are, well, that's great, Senator Osmond. We're glad that you're seeing these types of results. But how do we pay for it? The answer is something that's not been tried before, and that is a true public-private partnership with a results-based financing model that has never been done before in the U.S. It's been done in recidivism in the criminal justice system with success, and we believe it can be done in education as well. The model is very simple. We bring the private investment community to the table. They invest upfront in the dollars that we need to expand these programs at a level that will actually make a difference from an economy of scale perspective. And then we say to them, we would be willing to pay you back, but only if the results are actually there in both cost avoidance and in academic performance. If those two factors are there, then they would qualify to be paid back by our state. So what does that do for us? It enables us again to expand now, immediately on these programs, with contracts between our private investment community and the school districts that would provide these services. And then the state agrees to set aside some funds. In the bill, it calls for $1 million a year. That gives us access to $10 million right now. And over the next 4 or 5 years, we measure whether or not these programs are actually having the results. And if those results are there, then the state would be obligated to pay that back. Now I ask you, where in anything that we do in government do we have a results-based financing option? Where does that exist? It's not been done. It's so innovative that many of my colleagues are confused by it. So I ask you to think through that. We're tying performance to the financing. We're bringing the private industry to the table to support the expansion of these programs. We're requiring that our local school districts partner with private schools to enable the expansion of these programs. We're enabling technology-based options for parents that want to teach at home. I believe that this bill is addressing all the major concerns of my colleagues and enabling us to do something different as a state. Now with that, I'd like to turn some time, is Representative Hughes here yet? I'd like to turn some time then over to Superintendent Shumway. We're going to go in the following order. I'm sorry, I keep doing that to Superintendent Menlove. I really like Claire, and I really like you too. I just want you to Superintendent Menlove will be speaking first. Then we will hear from Alan Alexander of the United Way, Karen Crompton from Voices for Utah Children, and then Mr. Mark Bouchard from Prosperity 2020. And when Greg arrives, we'll have him speak as well. Each of them have about 1 minute. Then we'll go to an open conversation with the press and the public here asking questions. And we want to wrap up within the next 10 to 15 minutes, okay? And with that, Superintendent Menlove.
Thank you, Senator Osmond. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and take a few minutes and talk about this important piece of legislation. The State Board of Education recognizes its constitutional responsibility in providing education for students in grades K through 12 in the state of Utah, but also recognize the critical nature of what happens when students come into that system well prepared. We have seen that was results in a variety of different settings, a variety of different situations. Recognize that those results can come from home-based programs, school-based programs, private school-based programs. As such, the State Board of Education has taken a position of support of Senator Osmond's bill. They've listened to his presentation, they understand what it is, and we're anxious to be part of the implementation of this new program as we, again, do everything we can to try to meet the needs of students in the state of Utah. So, appreciate the opportunity to work with Senator Osmond. The State Office of Education, State Board of Education will be very much involved as this bill moves forward and as it's implemented. So thank you very much and appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Good morning. I'm Alan Alexander, the Chairman and CEO of Savage Companies and Vice Chair of the Board of United Way of Salt Lake. I'm happy to be here, and on behalf of our board, which is made up of 48 business and community leaders that represent a number of diverse organizations and businesses in our area. United Way supports collaborative efforts where we bring together a number of entities and groups for the betterment of children, and we believe that we can change the odds by working together. As we look at Senator Osmond's House or Senate Bill 71. It is a top priority for United Way, and we support this bill wholeheartedly because it brings private and public sectors together to look at measurable results to help these children. I, to keep in tune, volunteer on a regular basis at some of the schools where I read and work with children, and I do that to remind me of why we're doing this. This bill focuses on at-risk children, many of whom their parents don't have the means or the skill set to help prepare them for kindergarten. The data are very compelling that if children are prepared when they enter kindergarten, it makes a difference in their education. It also makes a difference in terms of their juvenile record and their ability to graduate and succeed in life. As I look at this as a businessman, if someone came to me with a project and said, we'll loan you this money, and if you have guaranteed results, measurable results, then you have to pay it back. If you don't have to. When I look at the return on investment to the state, which is a return and a payback in just 6 or 7 months and returns several dollars for every dollar invested, it's really a chance for our state to be innovative, and most importantly, it's a chance for us to change the odds for at-risk children who can benefit from this piece of legislation. So we encourage it to be passed. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Karen Crompton, President of Voices for Utah Children. You know, Voices for Utah Children has had a long-standing interest in improving opportunities for children and families. But that interest has become even more focused in recent years as researchers have grown the science of early childhood development. We know the achievement gap starts early. By kindergarten, children from low-income families have about only half the vocabulary of their more affluent counterparts. We know that children who start behind usually stay behind. Children who are not proficient in reading by 3rd grade are 4 times more likely to drop out of high school and 13 times more likely if they live in poverty. A child's brain grows roughly to 85% of its full capacity during the first 5 years of his or her life. These are also the years when a child's sense of what is possible is being formed. We know that business and military leaders, educators, and economists support preschool. The Institute for a Competitive Workforce, which is an affiliate of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, found in a 2010 report, quote, "For every dollar invested today, savings range from $2.50 to as much as $17 in the years ahead." Research by the University of Chicago economist James Heckman, a Nobel laureate, points to a 7 to 10% annual return on investments in high-quality preschool. We know that the parents of 42,000 preschool children in Utah support preschool. The parents of 1,000 children on the waiting list for the Granite Preschool program support this bill. We know that well-off, well-educated families who can afford pre-K education are enrolling their kids in preschool. We know that struggling families who are living in poverty, have modest educations, and live in challenging circumstances can't. If we truly believe that every child deserves the chance to climb the ladder of success and reach their full God-given potential, then we at least need to make sure they can get to the first rung on that ladder. SB 71 is good for kids, it's good for Utah, it's good for all of us.
It's good to be with everyone this morning. I'm Mark Bouchard. I'm chairman of the board for Prosperity 2020. I've worked very closely with United Way and many others, including Senator Osmond, on this particular legislation. The senator addressed something I think was very poignant. Doing things the same way with the same people and trying to expect different outcomes, you know, the definition of insanity. I'd like to address leadership if I could for a moment. Leadership is about looking at the way things are, but understanding the way things should become. It's about having vision for the future and recognizing that vision scares people because it invokes change. But it's important for us to live up to our potential and become what we should become. I think it's one of the great qualities and characteristics that Senator Osmond carries with him. An ability to see the future and see what things should become. That's so vitally important for our state, in a state where we speak over 130 languages in the third grade alone, a state where we have great change in our demographic makeup. That's changing more rapidly than any other state really in the country. We have to address this change. It requires leadership and it requires vision. And it requires one other keen leadership quality. The ability to sit down and have a dialogue about well-founded research and about people. And the ability to collaborate with people across a broad spectrum of interests. You have a broad spectrum of leaders, community and education leaders behind us today. That's a testament to Senator Osmond's leadership about bringing together stakeholders in a very unique way. We not only emphatically support SB 71, we support this senator and his continued work in education as a leader and as a visionary of how to bring people together and find solutions. Please support him and his efforts and all that he's doing, and please support SB 71. It's important to our state. Thank you.
Okay, we now would like to open this up for just a few minutes of questions, if there are questions in the audience. Do we have any that would like to ask? Well, that makes it easy. Well, with that, I'll just, oh yes, Brandon, go ahead.
Ask one quick one. How quickly will this get implemented if it's passed?
The intention is to begin implementation in the next education school year. So the funding would be made available for the 2014-15 school year. So pretty soon. Any other questions that you'd like to cover? Yes, sir.
Is there any sense of the demand among private investors for this kind of opportunity?
Thank you. Great question. We do have expressed interest right now from the private investment community. I can't specify the exact companies, but we have commitments for up to $10 million already from private investment organizations wanting to participate right now. Other questions? Oh, there's Mr. Hughes. I would love to have Greg, Representative Hughes, come up and just say just a quick few words about this bill. He is the co-sponsor in the House, and then we will wrap up. Thanks, Greg, for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You can't plan these things. I had a bill on consent and or on concurrence, and because the Senate amended my bill, we had to agree. It's his fault I'm late. Thank you. Thank you. Let me tell you something. I have scrubbed this bill. I have looked at this bill to see what would ever be the problem with this kind of public policy, and I can't find it, and I'll tell you why I can't. It's exciting to think that there are private investors in this state who want to invest in our kids. And not just our kids, but our high-risk kids. As a policymaker, we know that there are considerable resources that we spend on children for individual education plans, special education needs. If there are entities out there that want to put dollars in before kindergarten, and only if those children, those students are streamlined and we are not seeing those additional costs, will those resources be paid back? Those are dollars in education that we're not coming up with here and that we're actually ultimately saving. I compare it to charter schools, our non-traditional charter schools. One of the values of that is it has created private dollars to build actual schools that we're able to pay back over time as our students enter these non-traditional public schools. And it has benefited us. And in my district, we've seen rural schools built in a time where the traditional model would not have let those schools arrive. This is that, but with the kids. This is bringing real dollars, invested dollars, into these kids. And let me tell you something, the legislature already does this. We've already prioritized dollars through software for pre-K, preschool, for kids preparing for kindergarten, but it's in the homes. But for me, my mom's a single mom. I was raised by my grandmother and my mom. And I went to what we call it nursery school. It's preschool now. It sounds a little bit tougher than nursery school, but I went to nursery school, okay? What about those kids? What if there isn't a home that can take advantage of the resources that we're currently providing right now? This is an incredible model. I am proud to be the House sponsor of it. I think it is thinking outside the box and doing what Utah has to do. We have a lot of kids who like to brag. We have a lot of kids. The good news is we have a lot of kids. Bad news, we got a lot of kids. And it's hard to do this. And where we can find resources outside of traditional models that improve our ability to deliver education, it's a banner day, and I'm proud to be the sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, question?
I just represent parents from the PTA, and I think the one area that would be concerning to me is that do we have an opportunity for parents to interact with their children? That's
Great point.
of significant importance.
Absolutely. Well, let me just clarify that under this bill, it's not just an opportunity, it's a requirement. That parents have to make the decision. It's a voluntary program. They're engaging themselves to decide if this is right for their child. It's a choice for parents to choose a classroom or a technology option. Second, we require that they are actively engaged monthly in the classroom with their kids if they choose a classroom option as part of the requirement. In fact, it's one of the evidences that work within the granted program is that parents are directly engaged. So as you interact with those who would be opposed to the bill, I would say these final words. There is research that shows, longitudinal proven data that show that these programs work for at-risk kids. There is cost avoidance potential for our state. Evidence is they are proven. There are significant academic results bringing these kids to at or above peer level. And yes, parents and families are involved. This is not to replace parents, it's to help them. It's time that we do something different. And with that, I have one last question.
Yeah, I've had some experience working with at-risk youth. My emphasis is primarily leadership skill building, resilience to negatives. Will this be part of your agenda if it is approved?
I'm confused about the question. Could you restate?
Leadership building. You're
Yes.
talking
Oh,
about
skills,
the
student skills?
Yes, sir.
Well, actually, that's a separate bill that I'm working on.
Okay.
And that is something I feel very passionately about as well, but it's a separate initiative. I realize that we're over time. If you do have additional questions from the press, please come see me after, but I encourage you to, as an action, contact your senators. We need their support. There's a lot of concern and debate that's going on, but we need you to do something. Contact them, let them know how you feel. And with that, thank you so much for being here today. Bye-bye.